When the raw stuff of chaos pours forth from the polar gates, the etheric energies will naturally split into their 8 component parts, known as the winds of magic. These winds will then blow out across the Warhammer world, for both good and ill. As they make their way towards the equator, these winds will be drawn to people, places, or objects that exemplify some fundamental truth about each wind's nature. Most of them will seek out transient materials, such as beacons of light, roaring bonfires, or flowing water, but the yellow wind of Shaman will gather in and around dense, permanent objects, especially metals. Gold and lead are particularly inundated with it, but all metals bear at least a trace amount of the yellow wind. Thus, it is easier to manipulate all metallic elements with the wind than other objects, and it is for that reason that the arcane discipline utilizing Chamon is known as the Lore of Metal. At its heart, Chamon is the wind of transmutation. Its spells change material objects for good or ill, rusting new forged blades, reinforcing broken plate mail, and enchanting allied armaments to new heights. While the accumulated Chamon in metal makes them prone to manipulation, it can also change other objects as well, and many mages that weave the wind of metal will also be alchemists, obsessed with changing something from one state of matter to another. This is easier to do if the object that is to be has a similar nature to the object that currently is, such as turning lead into gold, but that's not a requirement. The most potent shamanic spells can transcend all such boundaries, even turning living, breathing flesh into lifeless gold. Such far-reaching transmutations are hardly long-lasting, but the results are still catastrophic. Few creatures can survive being gilded statues for even a few minutes, after all. Despite, or perhaps because of its nature as the wind of transmutation, Shaman could also be considered the most civilized wind of magic. It is a magical manifestation of sentient life's need to learn, teach, and understand the world around them. Just as importantly, it also reflects the moral desire to take this academic knowledge and practically implement it to improve their lives. Thus, while most spells invoking Shaman involve metal in some capacity, a few incantations revolve around logic, experimentation, and other cognitive exploits. Some are particularly helpful in focusing and clearing the mind, useful for both apprentices studying the Yellow Wind for the first time, and elder magisters who have lost some of their faculties from repeated lead and mercury exposure over their long years of service. Just like those who sculpt the other winds of magic, mages harnessing Shaman will adopt some of the wind's qualities. In fact, it's not uncommon for experienced gold wizards to become dry, stuffy academics obsessed with understanding the material world. Even those bearing only a passing bond with the wind can find themselves manifesting some of these traits, and this has led some scholars to believe that the Dwarfs of the World's Edge Mountains might have an unusually strong connection to Chamon. While this has never been voiced to one of the mountain folk, it would make a great deal of sense. After all, the Dwarfs are industrious, logical, rigid in their thought, and divinely blessed in the arts of metal shaping. To the last beardling, they exemplify the yellow wind in a way members of most other races can only dream of. A latent talent for Shaman might even explain the dwarfish love of gold above all other metals, as the vast deposits of metal magic locked up in the auric metal could subconsciously appeal to a race touched by Shaman. It is best not to mention this hypothesis to one of the Dawi if you value your life, however, as the suggestion that a dwarf is using magic, even subconsciously or unwillingly, is a grave insult. Chamon had 3 masters during the end times. After the elf mage Teclis unchained the vortex to create the incarnates, the yellow wind slipped through his grasp and soared across the world in search of a suitable host. It found such a being in Thorgrim Grudgebearer, last High King of the Dwarfs, as he was locked in battle with a titanic vermin lord. The wind imbued Thorgrim with newfound power, letting the dwarf best the monster before returning to his war council. Unfortunately, Games Workshop decided that the Dawi weren't an important enough faction to have proper representation in the end times, and Thorgrim was slain at the end of Book 4. With his death, the Wind of Metal was unleashed once more. This time it took root in Balthazar Gelt, former Supreme Patriarch of the Colleges of Magic, and perhaps the most accomplished human gold wizard of all time. Gelt used the wind to great effect, though ultimately he was slain by Manfred von Karstein while attempting to close the chaos portal Archaon had opened underneath Middenheim. Teclis tried to grasp the wind so the ritual would not be interrupted, becoming the third master of Chamon, but he was already holding onto the winds of Gur and Akshi. The mage, already physically frail and ill-suited for the winds he currently possessed, was overwhelmed by the effort and disintegrated beneath the onslaught of the three winds of magic. With that, we've come to the conclusion of our overview of Chamon, the Yellow Wind. Unlike most videos, I actually kind of hated making this video. GW could have slightly broken the naming convention for this wind, calling it the Golden Wind, but no, they went with Yellow Wind, which sounded like a euphemism for peeing. Absolutely disgusting, which made it a lot less fun to talk about. Besides that, though, it wasn't bad. As usual, it's chosen by my Discord. If you're wondering what the Total War applications of Shaman are, don't worry. I'll eventually release a video about the lore of metal in Total War Warhammer. Just like the video covering Olgu, that one will be painstakingly thorough. But that's a topic for another day. Until next time, this has been Sigmar's Chosen, signing off for now.